This is Software Meets Business, a podcast sponsored by Head Channel.
Welcome to another episode of Software Meets Business, and I am very excited to have Elizabeth Green with us today. Elizabeth is the Chief Brand Ambassador at Instinct Science, and she's got a great story about building software, a couple of great stories about building software. So Elizabeth, let's get started. Could you just kind of give us a bit of background about you? Where you came from. Did you sort of wake up and want to do this?
Sure.
Doing now, what happened?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, Rich. If you would have told me 2 decades ago that I'd be doing a podcast talking about my experience as a software builder, I think I would have positively thought that you were crazy. But yes, I am currently the Chief Brand Officer at Instinct Science. Instinct Science is a software company that actually purchased our information and media company that we sold, Brief Media, then rebranded as Vetmedics. And so I was the CEO and founder of that business. We initiated and launched the company in 2002. So started out as strictly a media company in the niche of small animal veterinary medicine.
Oh,
And so, about a decade into our existence, it was very clear to us that our strategy was changing a bit. And part of the reason that I launched the publication to begin with is I saw that reading habits were changing and how people were seeking information. And remember, this was way before Google was even really a well-oiled machine. So we had seen that reading habits were changing. But about a decade into it, we realized that we wanted to produce the kind of information and content that our audience, small animal veterinarians in practice, needed every single day. And so that took us on a little bit of a different venture. And we found out the one thing that they need every single day was drug dosing and drug dosages and all of the information that goes around that, what could be side effects or counterindications with other drugs. And so we looked for a resource out there and found one in the industry, and it was called Plum's Veterinary Drug Handbook. And I say
right.
handbook because it was literally a book, and it was quite large, heavy book. It was used by 94% of our target audience here in the US. And the reality of that is there was typically one book in a practice. And so if it was a practice with 5 doctors and you needed to look up a drug dosage, you had to go find the book and look it up. So it was very easy to see, wow, this is a problem, right? And one that could be solved with technology.
So did you own
So
that publication as well at that point?
no,
Oh, okay.
no, we didn't. It was owned by Dr. Don Plum, who had created all of the information and had built it himself. He was a pharmacist that was working for the University of Minnesota in their veterinary school and realized that there was a gap in knowledge in the veterinary market, and then built that all of the information himself. So I was given an introduction to Dr. Plum and went to meet him and convinced him that we wanted to work with him to build a platform, a digital platform. And I remember one of his profound questions was, "How many of these have you done before?" And I had to answer honestly, "Well, none." But here's why. Here's why we're a logical choice for this. And our publications were very well known and thought of in the industry, and so it did appeal to him to be partnered with somebody who had a strong reputation and to pair our great diagnostic and treatment information and content with his great drug content. So the problem was that it was a great product, right? But the problem was it took a long time to go find and look up a drug dosage. And if you think how many times every doctor looks up a drug dosage and how many doctors there were in the field, that's a lot of time that was spent. So we were able to take that product and put it on a phone, right? So that every doctor has the opportunity to look it up, have all of that information at their fingertips, right in their pocket. So that was what took us down the path. And so the next problem
So
was that,
what time was this? What year was this? Was this
yeah, 2013. So it's been
2013?
12 years ago, right? The next problem was that Dr. Plum said, yes, I want to do that. And, and so my next problem was, oh my gosh, how do I figure out how to do that? And I think I've shared with you before that when I started my company, my husband was an entrepreneur who had started a software company. So it's very easy to have, I had a resident technology expert, and he always was providing really great input and helping us learn how to even use technology at that time to make processes and workflows within our organization much more efficient. Then, probably a decade into my business, I lost my husband to cancer, and so I found myself not just obviously grieving that loss, but also without a technology expert, and I was terrified. I was terrified of technology. I was afraid to even begin to immerse myself in it because I thought I would be exposed about how little I really knew about technology. And then one day I decided I needed to face this head on. And so I signed up to go to a technology conference and
Is
in Vancouver.
is this before you built the software? You decided to go to the technology conference.
Yes, it was before we had actually started building it,
Yeah.
and it was it was amazing to go. I was very intimidated at first, and when I engaged with the culture at a technology conference, it was very different than what I've been used to in veterinary medicine. Very casual. Everyone had on jeans and t-shirts, and were highly knowledgeable, talking sometimes in a language that I didn't quite understand, but I had committed to going and learning. And it was during that conference that I met quite a few different people in different facets of the software industry that became friends and mentors to me as we began to build this product.
So I guess you said you felt intimidated. Was that because of the fact that everyone was dressed in a kind of a much more casual way, and you were dressed for business, and they weren't? Or was it obviously there was a gender disparity? Was there a gender disparity at this conference? I'm assuming there was.
It was predominantly male,
Yeah.
but there were quite a few women actually,
Oh, that's good.
and
Good.
some really, excuse my French, badass women in technology there. So no, I was very inspired by the women that were there, and yes, I felt like I was dressed like somebody's mother instead of I was not dressed in jeans or even holy jeans. Some of them had on, and t-shirts, and certainly couldn't talk the language, but was willing to to ask questions and get answers. And so that was, I think, the start of probably the most important thing that I needed to do to begin to put us on this journey to building software.
Yeah. So a lot of the people you met there ended up sort of kind of helping you, mentoring you along the way.
Yes, yes. And then when we began to build our own software product, we were able to identify, we decided that we didn't have the resources on our team to be able to do that. And we wanted to make sure that we were bringing on a team of people who were proficient and had that core competency of building great products. And so when we got to that point and sat through, sent out an RFP and sat through multiple presentations from those companies, then it helped prepare us to know what questions to ask, what were the things that we were looking for, and how to choose that perfect partner.
Yeah. Okay. So, what did you look for mostly in those pitches, those presentations? What is it that helped you identify a partner that was going to be right?
Well, I learned from some of the technology experts and mentors that I'd met at the conference to the importance of building, for instance, a prototype. Don't just assume that that you're communicating to them exactly what you want to build, but how to spend a lot of time up front planning and building a prototype. Spend that lion's share of the time up front making sure that your plan is right. And I think the thing that we were most impressed with the company that we went with, which is a company named Praxent out of Austin, Texas, who has since specialized in financial technology. But one of the things I was most impressed with them was their process and how they spent the time up front identifying and making sure that we are on the same page, building a prototype, validating what it was that we were going to be building, and validating that it was what our audience wanted as well. So, and it turned out to be a really great decision for us when it was our very first big software product, right? We had built websites and things like that before, but it was our first app that we had built, and we ended up being virtually on time. We were trying to launch it at a conference. We were tweaking things at midnight the night before
Yeah.
we launched at the conference. In full disclosure, but it was completed on time. We did a successful launch, and the project came in within 10% of what the initial bids were. So we consider that a huge success.
Yeah, sounds like a very good win. And so, because you felt that that happened because you did all of that extra effort up front, so you spent a lot of time on building a prototype, making sure that the flows were right, so people when they were using it, they were using it in the right way. You were looking at the context of what
Hmm.
people might have been doing at the time, because it's a mobile app, right? So there's a load of context that's going on.
Right.
That's
We built it first as a native app, and then as did both an Android and an Apple iOS app.
Yeah, yeah. And so, was there anything that didn't go quite as smoothly?
Oh, wow. Loaded question. Yeah. And I think anyone who's ever built any kind of software that tells you they had no mistakes or no mini failures, no epic failures on our end, but failures and mistakes along the way, they probably are just have not really built software right. Yeah, I think there were multiple things that learnings, I'll call them, that
Yeah,
we had along the way, and I think one of them, first of all, was just some changes that we needed to get over in our culture. Remember, our core competency was building content and information, and our team had a very high level of what I will call perfectionism uh, instilled in what they did. Because if you put together content and information, you get it wrong. There's always somebody out there who's going to point to that, right? And so we had to get over that culture. There had to be a culture shift, right? Because when you create your first software product, you do not want to wait until it's perfect to launch it. And so we had to get over that cultural shift and change within our organization. So I think that was the first thing that I would say that was a big shift for us. I think second, and probably related to that, was overbuilding a little bit for what we thought our MVP or minimally viable product should have been. So there were features that, again, we were working with veterinarians to help build this, right? And so it was everyone's opinion about, oh, I would like this or I would like this, and it doesn't take long before you start beginning to build too many features, right? That may or may not be used in the product. So uh, those weren't, again, epic failures. But if we had to go back and look at a few of those things, that would have definitely been one of them as well.
Right.
And I don't think one of the other issues, and this was really, these things happen along the way, is that one of the plugins that we ended up using in our software product ended up, we got word 6 months after we launched that they were going to discontinue that, and so we had to go and figure out a new solution for that. So
Yeah.
again, sometimes those are things that you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I think in general, we had gotten one of the advice that I had gotten when I was at my technology conference is I'd had a tech provider tell me, when you're building this, remember, you should be coding in the least amount of lines possible. And number two is that you should be coding in a way that requires the least amount of maintenance,
Hmm.
And so really those were really two rules. Well, it was great to partner with a company that understood that. And so as we went along and iteratively tried to make changes and improvements to our product along the way, other than having to change out the one plugin, most of the other changes, improvements, enhancements that we made along the way were fairly easy because of the foresight with which they had helped us build that product.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So the simplest software, or the simplest that it can be is definitely the way to go. But to get there, sometimes it takes longer than it would.
Right,
But every line of code that you add is adding complexity, right? A bit like if
right.
you write a book, and you want to change something, you have to go back through the whole thing. So yeah, the shorter it is, the better. Interesting insights. And really, it sounds like that conference was a real game changer for you.
Yeah, it was. I think if anything, it gave me confidence as somebody who wasn't in technology, and I think we see that these days. I think there are a lot of people that have never coded and think I can't work in software development, right? Because I've never coded, and we're finding that's just the opposite. People are bringing different skill sets and different perspectives, and even at Instinct now, there are a lot of people on those teams that have never coded, don't know how to code, but are very vital parts of those teams, either in product management or
Hmm.
managing the software engineers. So there are a lot of people, I think, now that are finding a place in technology that have never coded. So I think it was great for me to feel that I found a place, right, for me, that I could exercise and use my other talents, my vision, my love for solving problems, and still not be an engineer or a coder.
Yeah, and I think it feels like you got the most out of that conference because you were prepared to basically just walk around, meet people, and ask as many questions as you could possibly
Right,
get them
right.
to bear. But yeah, no, I think that's good. Just a great way of a great way of finding things out about how to get software built, basically. So what happened? That was in 2015, is that right? All this work happened.
2013 was when I went
Yeah.
to the conference. We signed the contract with Dr. Plum in December of 2013, built the product and launched it in January of 2015.
Let me just interrupt this podcast for a few seconds. I just wanted to let you know about our wonderful sponsor, Head Channel. Head Channel builds software engineering teams, and they've been building software for clients since 2003. They have a very simple engagement model. Either they develop and run it, or they build it and you run it. They can also help with finding a fractional CTO if you need that support. You can find them at headchannel.co.uk. And now back to the podcast.
Yeah, excellent. And then what happened?
Well, we the product was successful. The early days, we thought it would be easy to convert people from the book to an app. And one of the things that we learned in our industry is we actually launched with a native web app, right? And then it wasn't later until we came out with the iOS app, or the Android came a little bit after that. And what we learned, there were a lot of people that, again, not very tech savvy, said, "Oh no, I'm going to wait till the app comes out." Even though that early product functioned very much like an iOS or an Android app did when they were eventually launched. So just there were some trying to get people comfortable with that. The other thing is that they were used to buying a book that you only bought once every 3 years. The updated version only came out once every 3 years, and you had to pay for your app subscription annually. So getting people over that hump about what the value proposition was, even though they were, in their minds, they were having to pay triple, right? Because they were having to pay 3 times versus once, but understanding the value proposition that we were getting to them. So today we have over 40,000 individual subscribers to that, and then also work with a lot of corporate groups to have it integrated into their software platforms. And then we also work with human pharmacies in our industry too. So that product has done very well. And as you know, as we look at integration of information into software platforms, again, having a product that was still in a book would have never made that possible, right? So it opened, just the app that we built opened it up to being able to use that information in a lot of different software programs and places.
Yeah, changes the world essentially. Okay, and then but you didn't stop there, because you built another product, didn't you?
Yes. When we launched Plum's Veterinary Drugs, which was the replica, if you will, of what was in the book, the handbook, we also had our sights on another product that was being used in the human industry called Up to Date. And Up to Date is a product in human medicine that provides all kinds of information, from diagnosing to treatment to information for a client or a patient in human medicine. So everything from what we call diagnosis to discharge. And the product that we had built for Plums was only focused on treatment, drug dosages, drug interactions, side effects, etc. And so we began to look at what other information, maybe there was another book out there that we could take and adapt it to software. And unfortunately, we never found a book that had exactly what we were looking for. And so we decided to build the rest of that content ourselves. So we began down that path, building that product, and then integrated it into our initial Plums product. We called it Plums Pro, and did a soft launch of it in December of 2021.
Oh, great. Okay. And did you use the same team to do that build as well? And was it the same platform essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we did
Oh,
not. By that time, our own tech team had grown a little bit on our staff, but we realized we still didn't have this big outsourcing. And we went back to our initial team at Praxent in Austin, but they had begun to make a shift more into, like I say, financial technology.
hmm.
So instead, we selected a company out of Poland, STX
Yep.
Next, and we utilized them in building that product, and yeah, they did a fabulous job for us. And again, there are a couple of things that we maybe miss. When we look at some of the things, the learnings from that product is the initial product was again just treatment, right? And when they added some of the information, I think our UX didn't really necessarily understand. They didn't want to make the product look too different, right,
Right.
from what we had before, and probably maybe made a couple of what I'd call UX issues early on, and so had to go back and fix those once we got that critical feedback back from our audience, and came back and rebuilt, if you will, the interface on that. And immediately, as soon as we made those changes, we saw the usage dramatically go up.
Oh
So
yeah.
yes, that product is out there, and in fact, under our new ownership, we have just rebranded and launched what we would call version 2.0 of that,
Oh,
and so it's now being marketed as a product called Standards in veterinary medicine. So, and we've upgraded right now mainly the content, but you'll see an upgrade as well in the UX and format to come.
that's great. That's great. So just going back to the team, because obviously you had the team in Poland, so the time zone was different. How did you did that become a problem? Because before you'd had a more local time zone team.
Yes, it's definitely challenging when you're using somebody that's not near shore or and on substantially different time zones. But we were able, I think, to look evaluate both the pros and cons of that, and take advantage of some of those time zone differences. So, for instance, our meetings were always first thing on Monday morning, which was later in the day for them. Again, we were still working on sprints. So once we gave feedback on getting those sprints done, we could give that feedback, and then while we were sleeping, they were working through all of that. And so then, the next day you could look and see what had been done or what was in the queue. So yeah, I think we were able to take advantages of that. So,
Okay.
but it's always difficult, working with language barriers, cultural differences, and time zones. But yeah, I think when you pick the right partner and they're willing to work with you through those things, that you can still find success.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So I mean, what would you say then, to sort of sum up kind of how, if other people listening to this, they're going to thinking about going and building their own product, got any sort of three core kind of tips for them?
Well, first of all, I think I mentioned this, but spend the time up front understanding your product, or the problem and your audience and what it is that you're building. I think that Einstein, right, talked about that a
Hmm.
lot. That if you're solving an hour long problem, that you should spend 50 minutes doing the planning, and in 10 minutes solving actually building the solution. So it's not quite that simple in software yet, although it may be getting that way with AI generated code
It's definitely
someday.
changing. It's definitely
Right, it's
changing.
changing, but I think understanding the product, the problem that you're solving, and the product that you're building. What is the solution, and what is the value of solving that problem? So, and I don't think it has to be complex. We used to use the lean business model canvas, which is it's a single page
Yep.
document, right, that kind of leads you through asking you all of those really important questions. And if you can effectively answer all of those questions that are on the lean business model canvas, and it still looks like a great idea, then you can. I think you're well on your way to putting in the time into the strategic discovery that you need to. So I I still believe when you're building a new product, building a prototype up front. And, I think that's kind of become, just business as usual
Hmm.
these days. But back then, not everyone did that, right? So that was really important, and to really validate with your audience. I think internally, lots of times, right, we think we know the answer, and we make all of these assumptions, and you just want to validate that that they're right, or that you haven't missed an important detail along the way.
Yeah.
And then I think abandon perfectionism. It's always better to start out, keep it simple. And I think that's important, not just even in your initial builds, but build the product that does, minimally what you need it to do to solve this problem. Don't try to overbuild it. Don't try to assume don't try to come out with all the bells and whistles and fancy features, because not only does that often complicate the build itself,
Hmm.
but it also I think can complicate your UX too. And I think we've all been on a software product that maybe doesn't have great UX, and we use colorful language sometimes when that happens, because it's frustrating, right? So I think the simpler that you can keep your build up front, and then figure out how to translate that into a really simple UX. I used to, when we were first building this product, I would give it to some of the children that I knew, and said, okay, here's what you need to do with this. Can you do that? They had to be able to read, but other than that, and it's so true, right? If we can keep it very simple, so it's just intuitive what you need to do next, it makes the product that much better.
Yeah.
And I think probably the last thing is just that team that you put together, and how they communicate and collaborate with the rest of the people within the organization. You can create the greatest product ever, but if it's not marketed correctly, if you don't have great customer service around it, it's gonna be mitigated. The success of that product will be mitigated by all of those other things. So having that a great collaboration and integration within the organization, making sure that, for instance, that retention is there. We always spend a lot more money and a lot more focus on retention, even than initial marketing. So, and it
Hmm.
was, I think, different than most software developers, usually typically your greatest cost is that customer acquisition cost, right? And because we had a media product, because we had a really viable database, we were able to use that database in our media product to and made money right off of producing that. And so technically, theoretically, our customer acquisition cost was zero.
Yeah.
I say theoretically. There's obviously dollars behind it, but it was but
Low.
theoretically you were making money off of producing that product that gave you those customers.
Yeah. Excellent. So look, Elizabeth, what's the future? Where does this all go?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I thought you were going to tell me that, Rich. Um, Yes. I mean, the world is changing so rapidly
Hmm.
right now. Um, First of all, I think people used to think of technology, AI, right, has this new product, right, that we add into everything that we're doing, and we see now that really AI technology in general, like that's really the commodity, right? You can't be in business today and operating effectively or efficiently if you're not using technology, right? And I think the same thing with AI. We are seeing every day how AI can help us. And if you would have told me a year ago how much I would be using it in just the processes, right, of everything that we're doing now, I don't think I would have, I really could have imagined that. So I think it's really, yeah, I think that we will see AI integrated into everything that we're doing, every business segment, right, will have AI integrated into what they're doing to improve efficiencies, to improve the speed on what we're doing. So it won't be. I know people talk a lot about AI replacing jobs. And I'm sure there will be some jobs replaced by that. But Rashad Tabakawala is a marketing expert that I get his newsletter and read everything that he does and talks about. He does a lot around technology, and he said, it's not that people are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, but people who don't use artificial intelligence will be replaced by people who do use artificial intelligence. And so, yeah, I think we'll see it permeate every part of our business. As we look at our roadmap, there's obviously AI integrated into the products that we're developing and creating in the industry to make them better.
Yeah. I mean, do you see it that, obviously because you've got an information source, um, probably you're not going to let AI train on it, but you might have you might give it an interface to say, well, if you've got an AI product, that AI product can come and look up information in our database.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's for us, we already have all of this great data and information, right? So to be able to really enhance search
mhm.
through AI, just like we've seen in Google, nobody wants the link to the information anymore. They want the answer right there in the for you. So we're seeing that shift, right, in how people want information delivered up to them. I think too that we're going to see some really profound changes in certain segments. I think education, for instance, is one that I'm very excited to see how AI and is going to change right now in education, and there are so many different industries like that right now too, where AI is becoming, right, that assistant, right,
Mhm.
your agent for. I used it the other day I was working on my own personal financial plan. And so I put in all of these different parameters for how what I was looking to do. And not only did it spit out the entire plan for me, I was able to give it variables and said, yeah, but what if I lived to 100? It immediately in a nanosecond provided that. I said, what if the market drops 20%? What does that look like? It immediately created all that. So we're able to do things in nanoseconds now, right, with artificial intelligence. So I'm super excited to see how that will continue to change. I can tell you right now in veterinary medicine, one of the number one ways that people are using AI is to do all of their dictation for their client records. And most of the people that are using those products are telling us it's saving them 2 hours a day by creating their client records, and then also telling us that they're better. The outcome is better. So those are some of the places that we're seeing artificial intelligence used right now, and I think it's just going to be phenomenal how it will permeate and all facets of business.
Yeah, it's an amazing time. It's an amazing time to be in the industry and be working in it. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today. We've really enjoyed it, and yeah, wish you all the best for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Software Meets Business, the podcast sponsored by Head Channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your preferred platform.